today? Well, we're gonna talk about importing and exporting today. Files, and one of the main menu options that we have available to us now is we can right-click on an item and decide whether to import some data and or export some data. And I thought, hey, this is a good time just to talk about file types and kind of what they are at a lower level. Importing and exporting them are great. And it's done a lot for all kinds of different programs, the ability to import or export. So what are all these different files that I'm looking at here? We got all this stuff. We got Dataverse, Excel, SharePoint, Word, PDF, Access. Well, those are PDF and Access are self-explanatory. Word, RTF file, that's a Word pad. It's an old version of Word. It's a text file. It's an older Word document that is based on text. Then you have a text file and an HTML, and let's get in depth on some of that for while you're working through these steps and working with these different files, importing and exporting. Let's figure out what exactly they are, and I focus. The focus is on these. And that is HTML. The one that your book does not even cover. That's a newer one. That's JSON for data, and then XML, a comma separated value, a CSV file. Then we're going to talk a little bit about some of the other files like a PDF file and an Excel file. But the main idea here is what's the difference between the file types, and that always comes down to what kind of file it is before we even discuss what kind of file it is. Oh my God, did I just say? Yes, I did. Okay, so there's two different file types. There is binary files, and then there are text files. They are all treated as binary at one point. However, a text file is what is being used to store a value inside of a variable that we have. But let's get it. We're gonna have to get into scribble time here. We're gonna have to get out to the whiteboard, and another thing that we're gonna need is we need lots of horrible scribbles there. Okay, give me my empty whiteboard so I can scribble some more. All right, text and binary. For that, what we have to do is we have to look at what what is a text file? And this is something where you use Notepad or a WordPad. Oh, looks like I've got some issues in here. Some things, configurations. So this is, a text file, but what's in this text file? What is in this text file? What does it actually have inside of it? And the answer to that is ASCII code. It's ASCII code. So yeah, it's represented in binary at some point, but there's an abstraction along the way. And that is where we take a value inside of some kind of binary RAM location and we chunk it into the representation of the data as text using ASCII code. And all text files are based on this. All programming code files and everything are based on this code chart. Even And it's kind of funny. Even the computers over in China using the Chinese symbols, that's just an extension of ASCII code. But remember, we're talking about, how all, I always kind of say to all students that everything's a number. Everything is a number. And that includes the characters that we use on the keyboard. They're assigned a specific number, a text number. And this is what the ASCII chart represents. Now, we have 128 keys on the keyboard. So how many different numbers would we need to represent and abstract? So essentially what we're doing is we're taking a numerical value and assigning it to its text representation, and the text representation is how it's going to be rendered on the screen. So every kind of everything that's in a text file is something that is represented from here. We can clearly type in capital letters, lowercase letters inside of our text file, and every computer out there, this is the very lowest level of input and output. Even the computers over in China, they have to work with this as a standard on every computer they have. This is the beginning of the standard of characters to or being assigned to numerical values. Here's the problem though, is since this is an abstraction and they're taking information from location RAM and they're abstracting it, they're saying the capital H is the value 72. We can't really take, for example, the number 1, which is value 49. We can't take this 1 and add it to that 2 on the processor, on the CPU. We have to actually convert that to what we call an integer to be able to process it. So it's a copy of what it represents in RAM. And that copy takes time. So text files are fairly slow when they're worked with, but log files, a lot of things they use text files for because it's very simple. There's only 128 different characters that can be output to a text file. And some of the ones of note are going to be the comma for a comma separated value. The comma is somewhere in here. I'm not even going to point it out because I don't care. Well, I do when I'm writing code, but yeah. One of those ones that I'm going to demonstrate for you is the tab, the tab character. And then there's the new line character. Here's the tab, that's the number 9 tab, horizontal tab. So when we push a tab, the value 9 goes onto the file in binary, and we know to represent it by rendering in white space for that location. And that's what a tab is. New line is when you hit the enter key. So what happens here in this file? And we're going to be very simple. A, B, tab, A, space, new line, I just hit the enter key, C, D. All right? So what's going on there? A, B, tab, A, new line, CD. Okay, we're gonna just put this over to the side. And I just typed characters in there, but I want to give you an idea of how this is actually output to the disk. And the way it's output to the disk is we got an A, so we take a 1 byte character, and it's a capital A, and we output the value 65 in binary to disk, And that represents our capital A that we have over here. Now we got a capital B, and so that's the value, so we put 66. So we look at the chart, capital B is 66, good. Then we got a tab, there's a tab there. So now what happens is we go over here to the tab and we put the number 9 there in binary. And then we've got a new line. That's when I hit the enter key. That's after I entered the A over here and then went down to the new line. So that means that I've got, what's the new line character? Number 10, new line. Then I've got the C and the D after the new line. So the C is a 67 and the D is a 68. And so this is how it looks on disk. And what the renderer, the notepad does is it goes in and says, oh, that's a 1 byte char. Let's assign that to, that's assigned 65, that means print an A. So it renders an A. Then it looks at this in the text file and says, oh, that's a 66. Goes to the capital B, renders the B. And then we see, oh, that's a tab. Let's go up here and render in that white space. Boom, right there. Then the next one, 67, let's render that A in there. Oh, wait, no, excuse me, I skipped over. The 10 is the new line after the A or so. Oh my gosh, it's nuts. So here is kind of the idea, is that all these steps are rendered based on the values that we have inside of our text file based on these guys right here. And that's where files start. That's how they begin. And that's what a text file is. And so when we talk about a comma separated file, a comma separated file is just a text file that has data and separates it with commas. And it does not have any new line characters. You don't want to do a new line and then go in there and continue with that. Oh, there's another new line. That's going to screw things up. Unless you're using the new line as a delimiter, and that is a new line delimited text file. And so then you would have your numbers enter, numbers enter, numbers enter, numbers enter, numbers enter, numbers enter, numbers enter. That is a new line delimited file. So a CSV, a comma separated file, is fairly common for going from different types of software because it's a standard. You can export things from another database piece of software as a CSV and import it into your access. So it's fairly useful, especially when a lot of your business would depend on being able to import outside data sources to be acted upon by the company. You know, could be outreach for potentially new customers, and if it's a large company, it's going to have a large targeted approach, and they would purchase data and import it into the database and form a plan from that. Okay, I'm getting into the weeds a little bit. So that is kind of what a text file represents, and that's going to be the basis for our next little bit of talk, and then we're going to get into what a binary file is and some examples of that. We'll come back to the whiteboard for that. Okay, we have CSV file that we've talked about. That's a text file. Boom. The next one I want to talk about is an HTML file. So we have text files, and what we can do is we can use some nifty character representations, like, we're still using ASCII characters, and we call this a markup language because it's not really it's not really a compiling language. It's a language that is read by another entity that then renders what's there, but depending on the instructions. So an HTML file just to, uses the ASCII characters to give instructions on how things should be rendered. And what is it? The software, the entity that renders it? Your Chrome web browser. And so an HTML file is just a text file, but it's a text file that contains instructions on how it's to be rendered and drawn on the screen. So let's give you an example, and we're gonna go play in a folder somewhere. Let's see here. Let's play in this one. Okay, and I'm gonna go ahead and do a file save as. And let's just put some stuff in here. Stuff. Okay, and then we're gonna do Control S, and I'm gonna do save as because it's the first time I've saved this. And I'm gonna go to that folder that I created. Where are you? Where are you, folder? There you are. Okay, save. All right, so we got stuff.txt in there. Now, if you can't see the extensions, that's what really differentiates text files, because all text files, they're based on the ASCII code. But the extension in Windows is what differentiates it between what kind of text file is it. They can all be opened up with Notepad and read. But if it's an HTML file, then yeah, we can open up a Notepad to edit the ASCII code, because the Notepad's not going to render the markup. The Notepad's going to render the ASCII characters that are inside the file in that file representation. And so I can turn this into an HTML file, this stuff, this stuff that I've got here. This is my text file. I can turn it into an HTML file. I need to have some extension awareness though. And so what you would do to see that is you would go up, and there's going to be a property in here where you do a view, and it'll be a view, and then you go down here to show, and right there, file name extensions. Make sure that's turned on. And if that's turned off and you're going into computer science, oops, big oops, okay? Just saying. Stuff.txt is a text file able to be opened up with Notepad. I also have it set up to open up with other different programs, but I can say open up with Notepad right here. And there's our stuff that we have, and it renders it. Well, what if I want this to be an HTML file? Well, then what I can do is I can put some markup in there, and let's just look at HTML code example. And we're just going to look at how it behaves. All right, so this HTML markup describes how to draw the web page. I believe, I want to go searching for a whole bunch, but there's a lot of crap here. Come on, just give me a simple example. Okay, here we go. Thank you. Okay, so this is a simple HTML code. We're marking up, and we're saying this is an HTML document, and in the document we want a heading of this is a heading. You notice it starts with a declaration, a heading, and then a closing heading. All it's using is the ASCII character codes available to it in a certain manner to give clear instructions on how that data should be treated. And it's a text file. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go over here to stuff.txt, and we're going to paste it in. Notepad. Okay, so I'm going to paste that stuff in. Now we have HTML code in there. I'm going to save it. Okay, but, and you know, anytime I open it, my HTML code is there. Oops, I really need to fix that. It's driving me insane. But how would I get it to render on Chrome? Well, I could open it up in Chrome, but still there's a problem here. It's got the TXT extension, so I need to change that. And I need to change that to either HTML or HTML. And when I change it, now the operating system says, oh, this is an HTML file, even though it's a text file. I know that I should open this in the web browser so it can be rendered. So now we can say open with, and there's Google Chrome, and then it renders it. Right there, boom. That's a text file, that's all it is. It's still at its base nature ASCII code. And I can even go in and now what I will do is, where's my silly notepad? Come on. Let's bring that back up. I lost it. I can go in here and notepad. Come on, I want to be simplistic with you guys and not break out crazy stuff. Oops, I messed that up. Okay, so in here, and then I can change this. I'm gonna say, hello world, you know, and then save it, come over here and refresh it, and there's my change. Text files. So a comma separated value is a special text file that is used, but there's other text files that are used for conveying data. And there's two in particular that are fairly important. There's the XML, and then there's the JSON file. So let's just go to ChatGPT. What is an XML file? So an XML file is, so we have text that is text files are very, they're very portable across different types of operating systems. So we've come up with standardized text files to convey data because of that ability to be cross operating system compatible. And there's two different types of formats, markup for text files to convey data that are used widely, and that is XML and JSON. What is an XML file? Well, what is an XML file? Well, let's get in and see. So a structured text file to store and transfer data in some kind of manner. And here's what the key part is hierarchical. Yes, you can have a structure of hierarchies of different types of data all put together. And so give me an XML example. Okay, let's do that. And so again, it's just a text file that is cleverly arranged using the ASCII code characters, the 128 code characters that are available to it. Okay. Just give me some simple examples here, guys. I wonder if this will... Okay, so we see that this is kind of an XML file, and yes, I know it's Greek to you right now, but you see how it's arranging data with different compartments or different different titles of grouping what kind of data is put together depending on specific titles. And you can see it's kind of like a markup, pretty close to HTML, that we're, and of course we're using, the same type of characters. So HTML and XML are fairly linked. You can embed them. You can embed XML into HTML. And again, it's just another clever use of the ASCII code characters to create structure of structures of data that can be very cross-compatible across operating systems and applications. And so this is an example of an XML file. Now JSON is this is an extension because XML kind of came about when HTML really started hitting its stride. It's kind of put with HTML. JSON is kind of put with JavaScript in the same manner. And JavaScript, what its ability is to dynamically change the HTML. So then what we can have is we can have data show up on a screen from a database that dynamically changes and is more user interactive because of that JavaScript and the JSON objects. So JSON object is a little bit more embedded into programming, and being cross-compatible across different apps. And of course, operating systems. It's just another example. Give me a JSON file example. Let's see if this is something. Okay, yeah, this is all right. So again, we're having a clever use of all the characters available to us on the keyboard to show data in an organized manner. It looks like they're mixing a little bit of XML in here. And this top one is a good example. But I mean, you guys can go in here and get a better idea of the, so here's an example of a string of data that comes from a JSON object, and it's describing a name of John, an age of 30, and a car well, evidently it's null, so that means that John does not have a car. Poor John. No girlfriends. Okay, John. We're going to get away from John. All right, so let's go back to our thing. We've talked about HTML, JSON, XML. Now that leaves us with a PDF file and an Excel file. Now those are binary files. And here's how a binary file is different from a text file. While a text file, what it does is it takes the ASCII code characters of data in memory, in RAM, and abstracts it and converts it to its text version. So if you had the number 464 in RAM and you wanted to output that to a notepad, it would have to go in and be converted from this value in binary to be represented in a notepad or with ASCII using these characters, because it's truly 464 in the RAM. It's not the abstraction of it using the ASCII code chart. It's really the number. And so the number in binary is not very human readable, and that's one other reason why we have text files, is because we will go ahead and make the conversion from this, what we call an integer that's got 4 bytes available to it, so that it can update those bytes, and we will convert it to text and then output it to text. So there's that step in between that's a problem. And not only that, but if you wanted to take this 464, convert it from text, and then go from text back to the number, and then because ASCII code characters cannot be processed on the CPU as binary, that's actually a physical process. They're not the same size. every piece of data when you do a process on the CPU, you have to take two integers and process them together on the CPU because they have to be the same size. You can take two floating point numbers that are bigger than integers, but you can't take an int and a float and process them on the CPU because they're not the same size. So ASCII code can definitely not be added to. You can't just increment it. It has to be moved over to its actual binary representation on disk. And this binary representation in RAM has the ability, because it stores up to 4 bytes, it can get up to the value of like 32,000. You can set it to equal to 32,000 or any number, and it's going to take up the same amount of room on disk that it's for data type, which is an integer, which is 4 bytes. So no matter what, when you're saving to binary, you're not saving a representation of the data. You're saving the whole piece of data. You're saving the whole number, the whole thing, and that means that you can update that whole number on disk without messing with anything else. A text file has to shift as it grows. So in a binary, you can say, okay, I want the first number that's going to represent some kind of data in my file to be 4 bytes. And that first 4 bytes will be dedicated just for that number. And let's say that we're putting 464 there. Then I can say, okay, well, I want a larger number, one that can go to 64,000 values. And that one's going to be 8 bytes. And it's going to represent something else in my file, whatever it is. And then what you can do is when you open up this file, to be worked with by the application that stores it, converts it, is able to read these values, you can update these values right on the hard drive without messing. So I can come in and update this 8 bytes, and it doesn't touch this 4 bytes. And that's the speed of binary. When you're outputting and importing with binary, you are going directly to the disk. There's no abstraction. There's no in between. There's no converting to ASCII the value that's inside of it. It's the actual whole variable that can be chunked right from the hard drive onto the CPU for processing directly. So that's what a PDF file is. It's a proprietary file. So when we think about, applications and how they might want to protect their intellectual property, one of those ways is to create applications that have different types of files that have different arrangements of their data. They have to know how to read this data. They have to know that, we only read the first 4 bytes. The first 4 bytes is this. Because if you don't know, you could read in the first 2 bytes and not even get all the data. If you're trying to break their file types and how they represent data in it. And that's a hobby that people have. Yeah, they'll go into file types and break it down as binary and see what is what and where and what makes sense. So you have to know how things are stored in the binary file to be able to open it up. And that's the proprietary nature of binary files. And that's why software takes advantage of them, like Adobe Acrobat. I hate Adobe. I hate Adobe. They always want money for stuff that's, but I guess that makes sense. PDF files are binary. Excel files are binary. They are given a special extension that only the app that is able to open and load and render the binary and knows where all the data is within that file is able to work with it, such as an Excel file. Okay, well, we got Excel. We got PDF file, we got Adobe. Okay, guys, that's an overview of files and file types. I think that was, from looking at a lot of the stuff in your book. That's one thing that I really wanted to discuss with you as you're working with importing and exporting files, and give you a little background nature on, understanding of what you're actually working with. All right, take care. It's been a pleasure.